Great to see all the countries everyone is joining us from. It's very exciting. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for this conversation about the Women's Empowerment Principles, or the WEPs as they're known for short. I also want to give a quick particular shout out to our Target Gender Equality Accelerator companies, or TGE companies, who are now close to the middle of their journey. We hope to see many of you sign the WEPs over the course of the program, as the WEPs will be covered in much more detail throughout the program. We're hoping that everybody participating today can leave this session with a better understanding of the WEPs, including the principles themselves, how to become a signatory, why it's beneficial for businesses to sign the WEPs, and the resources and tools that are available to the signatories in order to support them to better advance gender equality across the workplace, marketplace, and community. Throughout the session, please do feel free to send your questions using the Q&A function that you can see at the bottom of your screen, and we'll respond in written form. But also after our company speaker segment, we'll also get to some verbally as well. So to get us started this morning, on the next slide, you can see our teams. So I'd like to introduce you to the UN Women and UN Global Compact teams at the global headquarter level. You'll see we're joined today by Ms. Anna Falt and Miwa Park from the WEP Secretariat at UN Women. And on the UN Global Compact side, we're joined by Chris Kipp, Lina Kadumi, Samantha Zalewska, and myself, Margarita Panagopoulos. Now, before I hand it over to Anna to kick us off with her introductory remarks, I'd just like to quickly draw your attention to the slide on your screens. This slide provides a brief, high-level overview of what each team is responsible for in relation to the WEP specifically. So, for example, the UN Women WEP Secretariat at HQ, regional, and country office levels are responsible for the WEP's website, for the resources on the website, for WEP's-led events, the WEP's onboarding, and other related activities. Then the UN Global Compact and the country networks, on the other hand, are responsible for the management and support of the WEP's gender gap analysis tool that Miwa will speak more about a little bit later today, as well as other gender equality work related to the WEP, such as the Target Gender Equality Accelerator, as well as the flagship Forward Faster initiative. But with that, I'll now hand it over to Anna to provide her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you for joining today's WEPs 101 session. It's so wonderful to see such a diverse group of companies from across the world interested in learning how the Women's Empowerment Principles, or the WEPs in short, can help a more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient business future. This session comes at a remarkable moment. COP30 is taking place this week in Brazil. It is a reminder to the world that the transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy cannot succeed without women's full participation and leadership. Climate change and gender equality are deeply intertwined. On the one hand, women are disproportionately affected by climate impacts, and on the other, they are critical innovators and solution builders in renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, green finance, and circular economy systems. The WEPs provide companies with a clear and practical framework to take action across 7 principles under 5 pillars of governance and leadership, workplace, marketplace, community, and transparency and accountability. You will learn more about the 7 principles today and how to advance gender equality and drive inclusive and sustainable economies at today's webinar. The WEPs translate global commitments into everyday business practice, whether it's equal pay, safe and inclusive workplaces, gender-responsive supply chains, and products and services that empower women as consumers, producers, and leaders. By joining the WEPs community, your company becomes part of a global movement of over 12,000 signatories working with the United Nations to align purpose and performance, creating business value while accelerating the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, you will also hear directly from 2 companies that have already embarked on the WEPs journeys. They share how the WEPs have helped them take a holistic approach to gender equality and unleash the potential of all employees. So as we listen and learn together today, I invite you to reflect on one question. How can your company contribute to a just and inclusive transition, one where women and men have equal opportunities to lead the way? Thank you again for being here and for taking this first step. The WEPS community is ready to support you and your journey towards equality, sustainability, and shared prosperity for all. Back to you, Margarita.
Thank you so much, Anna. So before we get into the principles themselves, I'd like to quickly give an overview. So the Women's Empowerment Principles were launched over a decade ago by the UN Global Compact and UN Women to provide guidance to business on how to empower women in the workplace, marketplace, and community. They're grounded in the recognition that business has a stake in and a responsibility for gender equality and women's empowerment more broadly. More practically, there are a set of 7 principles that encourage companies to look across their business, understand their responsibilities, and seize the opportunities for positive impact. The WEPs, as Anna mentioned, are more of a holistic framework. They're meant to act as a roadmap in a company's journey towards gender equality, and they cover topics like women in leadership, flexible work, child or dependent care, equal pay for work of equal value, gender responsive supply chain practices, as well as zero tolerance against sexual harassment in the workplace. When the WEPs were established, there were only 39 signatories, but today there are actually over 11,000 leaders who have signed the CEO Statement of Support for the WEPs and counting. This clearly shows that companies everywhere now acknowledge the value of actively supporting women throughout business operations, and that business really does have a fundamental role to play to advance gender equality and social sustainability. As mentioned, the principles are holistic and are meant to be enacted all together in no particular order or prioritization. More information on all 7 principles, including the specific actions and resources, can be found on the WEPS website, weps.org. But now let's dive into each of the 7 principles themselves. So the first principle, which you can see on the next slide, is on establishing high-level corporate leadership for gender equality. Corporate leadership is an integral part of making gender equality and women's empowerment a top strategic priority. It publicly signals the CEO's as well as the executive team's goals and targets for implementing the WEPs, and how the 7 principles will become part of the corporate sustainability strategy, day-to-day operations, and the organizational culture. So setting the tone from the top is very critical to driving action throughout the organization. And by signing the CEO Statement of Support to the WEPs, business leaders send an important message to employees, customers, investors, business partners, and all other stakeholders that advancing gender equality is a company priority with top-level support. They also communicate that gender equality is not just a women's issue. Rather, it's a smart business strategy that will strengthen the organization and benefit everyone. Principle 2 of the WEPs is to treat all women and men fairly at work without discrimination. This is not only a moral necessity, but it's also good for business. Having equal treatment between women and men in the workplace translates to better talent acquisition, higher employee retention, as well as satisfaction, increased productivity, as well as better decision-making overall. And now this is even more important given recent global phenomena such as the COVID-19 pandemic's disproportionate impact on women. We've already seen the gender gap grow. It will now take 135 years, or about 5 generations, to close the economic gender gap. But we've also seen these global phenomena that fair treatment extends beyond equal pay and includes a variety of other aspects related to work. This includes flexible working arrangements, inclusive workplace culture, as well as gender-sensitive recruitment and retention policies, amongst many others. Principle 3 of the WEPs focuses on employee health, well-being, and safety. Physical, emotional, and mental well-being are included in this. Of course, it's important to make sure there's no sexual harassment or violence in a company, as this can not only be devastating to employees' overall well-being, but it can also result in high costs to women in terms of lost earnings, missed promotions and opportunities, and less productivity encouraged at work. Policies in line with Principle 3 include safety measures against potential physical risks, such as harmful chemicals or materials, as well as preventing all forms of violence and sexual harassment at work, ensuring that all employees equal access to health insurance. Principle 4 covers education and training for career advancement. It's important that companies have trainings for all employees, not just human resources or the sustainability departments, about how the company is advancing gender equality to better align everyone around shared values and help ensure compliance with company policies and practices. It's also important to have networking and mentoring programs for women employees, especially in more traditionally male-dominated fields. And actually, we have a platform for web signatories that's called WEPS Learn, and this includes personal development modules that can be used by women to advance their professional skills. But my colleague Miwa will speak a little bit more about this, as well as other resources shortly. Principle 5 then moves the focus from the workplace to the marketplace, focusing on enterprise development, supply chain, and marketing practices. This principle is really supposed to focus on the company's reach beyond its own office and its own employees by focusing on its interaction with its customers, suppliers, as well as other businesses. So, for example, the suggested actions under Principle 5 include removing harmful gender-based stereotypes in all media and advertising, implementing gender-responsive procurement practices, helping women overcome barriers in accessing financial services, and many more. Principle 5 then moves us to the community focus of the principles by empowering women through community initiatives and advocacy. It's really important to realize that a business's reach extends beyond just its business practices. Employees are living in a community, and company policies and practices affect employees, as well as their families, outside of the workplace and extending beyond the four walls of a business. So this principle encourages companies to advance gender equality by leading by example. So working with community stakeholders and officials and using philanthropy and grants programs to support community initiatives are some of the things companies can do. Finally, the last principle is Principle 7, which focuses on measuring and reporting. A common theme we see in our work with companies on advancing gender equality is that commitments are being made and are in place, but then are lacking the actions that are needed to impact on these commitments. So Principle 7 encourages companies to measure progress on these commitments and publicly report, and this holds companies accountable in making lasting progress. It also highlights the importance of collecting sex disaggregated data to provide a better understanding of how women are differently impacted across the workplace. I'll now pass the floor to my colleague Miwa, who's going to speak a little bit more about the WEP's journey, as well as different resources and tools that are available to WEP signatories. Over to you, Miwa.